Hey, what's up guys? Jed here. Intermittent fasting every day or every other day? Good question. Let's talk about it. So again, as always, the answer really depends on what you do on a daily basis in terms of weight loss, exercise, routines, but I'm going to sort of give you an explanation that really makes this easy to decide between whether or not you should do intermittent fasting every day or every other day. But to give you the shortest answer possible, I think you should do intermittent fasting every day. Alright, so I want you to understand that anything that you do, it doesn't matter. Whether that's intermittent fasting, keto, or juicing, doesn't matter. The way you lose weight is you need to be eating less calories than you normally do on a daily basis. That's it. Everything else like intermittent fasting, keto, and whatever else is out there are just tools, you could say, to help make this process of counting calories and everything a lot easier than it is. Let's say we got a dude named David here, which I already put, and let's have another dude and let's call him Joe. Okay? Alright, so they're both doing intermittent fasting, right? Intermittent fasting. And they both need 2,000 calories a day to maintain their weight. And let's say that they both weigh 150 pounds. Oops, 150 pounds. Whatever. And let's say David does intermittent fasting 7 days a week. Okay, and Joe does intermittent fasting only 3 days a week. Okay, all right, so these guys are both pretty much the same. The only difference between the two is that one does intermittent fasting every day and then Joe does intermittent fasting every other day. Okay, for David, right, it's recommended that he does intermittent fasting every day, because let's just say if he chose not to do intermittent fasting one day, just to have like a free day to do kind of whatever he wants, David might actually mess up that day. Maybe he had some sort of family event in his life or something. Maybe he's working that day or something that interrupted his schedule, so he can't do intermittent fasting. I also want to say that David doesn't really have a good understanding of how calories work, and by that I mean just because he thinks he tracked everything correctly, little does he know he's actually not really doing it properly, meaning that he's in a caloric surplus and he doesn't even know it. Which is why when he doesn't do intermittent fasting, it makes this process harder. But if he did do intermittent fasting, he would have an 8-hour eating window, meaning he would have an easier time staying in a caloric deficit, even if he made a couple of mistakes here and there. So because of all that, he might actually mess up and then overeat that day, or what have you. So like I said before, out of everything that you do when it comes to weight loss, as long as you have a good understanding of how calories works, both of these guys are going to make progress, right? Whether you choose to do intermittent fasting every day or choose to do intermittent fasting every other day, right? Now for Joe, as an example, the only reason I don't recommend his method of intermittent fasting, which is every other day, or also known as alternate day fasting, the other 3 or 4 days is like saying those are free days where he gets to do whatever he wants, where he doesn't have to count his calories. He can just eat whatever he wants. He doesn't have to exercise because those are free days. He only has to do intermittent fasting 3 days out of the week, meaning those 3 days are the only days that he actually does something right. Now that's Joe. I'm not saying that everybody is like Joe. As a matter of fact, you can do exactly what Joe is doing, but better than what he does, and still get away with this 3-day intermittent fasting schedule routine. But on the other hand, I choose David's method because I know that a lot of people who are doing this schedule just like David, doing intermittent fasting every single day, will see better progress because they don't have these days where they have the risk of messing up because they're not following the routine, which a majority of people don't want to do. So like I said before, with intermittent fasting, really it's just a tool helping you stick to your caloric intake, which should be a caloric deficit, because compared to someone that eats all day, compared to intermittent fasting where if you chose 16-8, you're only limited to an 8-hour eating window, they won't be able to get the amount of calories they needed to gain weight in that short amount of time compared to someone if they were to eat all day. So if you were to do Joe's method of only fasting 3 days out of the week, week, the other days that you have for free, you run the risk of actually overeating because you're not doing intermittent fasting. You don't have a window anymore, right? I guess you could call those other days or other free days cheat days. Whereas David is doing intermittent fasting every day, meaning he has an 8-hour eating window every single day. He has a lesser risk of messing up, meaning he's pretty consistent because he's doing intermittent fasting every day. So kind of take David and Joe as your examples to see where you think you stand currently. If you think you can do intermittent fasting every day and stay consistent, then be a David. If you think you're a Joe, where you kind of feel like you can have 4 days out of the week to kind of just do whatever you want and only intermittent fast 3 days but still be able to lose weight, then by all means, be a Joe. But the point here is that I recommend intermittent fasting every day because it's easy. You don't even have to think about it. So I definitely recommend being a David, right, instead of a Joe. But at the end of the day, you can also be a Joe. This just kind of takes a lot more effort, because the reason I don't like Joe's method is because if I were to intermittent fast 3 days out of the week, if I were to do it personally, I know I can get away with that because I already have an understanding of how calories work along with intermittent fasting. So the other 4 days that I would have out of my week, I'll still be losing weight because I know how to stay in a caloric deficit with or without intermittent fasting. But of course, not everybody knows how to do that, which is why when you do Joe's method, you need to be smart about it. Whereas with David's, you don't have to really think about it too much. It's easy, it's pretty straightforward. That's why I think David's method is easier. So again, just to kind of recap, David's method is easier because here, like I said, when it comes to calories and your eating window and fasting window, you really don't have to think about it. You fast for 16 hours, eat for 8 hours, choose a schedule, that's it. Make sure you're eating less calories. Done. Whereas Joe, you got to do exactly what I just said, but only for 3 days, and then the other 4 days, good luck. I'm not going to tell you anything because that's your decision. I've already told you what you got to do here. Now see if you can fit it here. And if you can, by all means. They're both just as effective. You just need to see which one works for you. But if you were to ask me, I would go with David. Or you can say intermittent fasting every day. Alrighty guys, so I really hope I was able to answer that question, whether or not you should do intermittent fasting every day or every other day. It really depends on what you're doing and if you know what you're doing in the first place. So I recommend intermittent fasting every day because it's easy and you run the lesser risk of making mistakes. Plus it's easy to come back from it, especially if you intermittent fast every day. But if you did intermittent fasting every other day, that's 3 days out of the whole week. The other 4 is really, dependent upon what you choose to do on those days, since you won't be doing intermittent fasting. So if you have a good understanding of how calories work, how to optimize cardio and everything like that, then doing intermittent fasting every other day shouldn't be a problem. So there you have it. And if you guys want to learn more about intermittent fasting, be sure to check out my last video where I talked about if intermittent fasting is a fad diet or legit. Alrighty guys, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and tap that notification bell so that you don't miss any future videos on intermittent fasting. Also, don't forget to leave a like and a comment down below letting me know what you think is better, intermittent fasting every day or every other day. And with that said, I will see you guys next time.